Hello, lovely people. Psychic Debbie here. Hoping you're having a great day. Today, we're going to talk about ghost stories. And this one is going to be my number one ghost story. Going to have a whole collection of them. And this one is going to be talking to spirit. So, it's like, where do I begin, right? I have so many ghost stories. So, I was talking to spirit in my own way. And they said, yeah, start telling your ghost stories or adventures that you've had in your life. So I'm going to kind of start way a couple years ago. And so many years ago, exactly. I was in my early 20s and I just moved from Arizona to Minnesota. And I was living with my cousin, I was living with a friend, and she connected with her boyfriend and she was getting married, so her mom basically kind of kicked me out of the house. And so I was looking for a place to rent out. And there was this lovely lady named Blanche who had one of those old ranch houses, like the 1950s. And it might have had a basement, but it was like more one level ranch, kind of rambler kind of house. And so I went up to her. I found out about her through a friend or a family member. And she said, yeah, I rent out rooms. And so with me just starting out working in Minnesota, and I just started working at a place that made beer signs. And so, I didn't have that much money. So she showed me this room, and it was off the kitchen. It was like the kitchen, and it was really probably supposed to be a den, but I think they converted it into a bedroom. So it was like you had the kitchen, you walk in, there was a door there, and then there was the little room, and there was a bed. She had the bed and everything there, so I was renting the whole thing out. And then there was another door going out into the hallway. So like I said, I think it was either a dining room or a den. And she was a widow, and she was an empty nester. She had 2 kids. I think she had a boy and a girl. And so she was, for extra money, she would rent out her rooms, and then she also had a cleaning service that I helped her out with. So one night I'm sleeping, and I'm kind of like sleeping sideways, and I was looking towards the door that was towards the kitchen, and the door was closed, and I was sleeping and I was sideways, and something kind of like woke me up, like this feeling, or like when you feel someone's like staring at you. You're in a crowd and you're like, okay, and you turn around and the person's like looking at you and you're like, hello. So I'm like sideways and I feel like something's looking at me, and I wake up and I'm slowly opening up my eyes. And when I opened up my eyes towards the door, I was seeing this kind of like glittery light thing kind of creating this body. And the person wasn't standing, it wasn't from their feet up, it was from like their waist up to their head. And it's kind of like little sparkles, and it was kind of creating this image. And so when I was waking up and I'm seeing this image of this guy standing there, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, and what was really crazy was I wasn't afraid. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And he was probably about 6'2". He had a comb over. He was an older guy. He had a comb over. And he was slender, and he had dark eyes, and he had a somewhat of a round face, and he wore worn out clothes. Like you could tell that he worked with his hands. And so I was kind of like opening up my eyes, and he's looking at me like, staring at me, and I'm like, okay. And he goes, it was funny because he wasn't talking this way. He was talking in the mind, and he looks at me and he goes, who are you? And I, in my mind, go, I'm renting out the room. And he goes, what are you doing? He kept on asking me, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm sleeping. And he's like, no, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Debbie, and I'm renting out the room. And he just looks at me, and he's like, he was saying in his mind's eye, and he wasn't being mean or anything. He just kept on looking at me closer and closer, like he was trying to check me out. And he's like, well, do I know you? And I'm like, in my mind's eye, I'm like, I don't know. Do I know you? We're having this kind of conversation going back and forth with the mind. And he's like, I don't understand what you're doing. Who are you? And I kept on saying, I'm Debbie, I'm renting out the room, I'm in this space, we're just going back and forth. And he's like, it was almost like he kind of gave up. And he goes, okay, well, I'm going to send you blessings. And I'm like, okay. And it's so weird. I know it sounds really weird, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't frightened or anything. And it's like, okay, then it's almost like he put a spell on me, and I'm just like, okay. And then I fell back asleep, right? And so I get up the next day and I go talk to Blanche and I go, did your husband pass away? I didn't know she was a widow. And I go, did your husband pass away? And she goes, yeah. And I said, oh, I think I saw him last night. And she kind of got a little upset, and I could understand why. She's like, why didn't he come visit me? And I did blessings, and he died in the house. She tells me he died in the house. And so she was, saging and doing blessings and doing prayers and saying, come on and communicate with me and all this stuff. And I go, well, he kept on asking me who I was. I'm like, why does he keep on asking me who I am? And so she's like, well, I don't know. And so I said, well, do you got a picture of him? So she gets this photo album out and she's going through, and she was kind of testing me. She's like, oh, is it this person? I'm like, no, didn't look like that. And then she'd go through something and she'd go, oh, does it look like this person? I'm like, no, he doesn't look like that. He's got a comb over and he's got this brown hair. And so then she flips the page and I go, oh, that's the guy. And she goes, that's my husband. And I go, gosh, I wonder why he kept it. We were trying to both figure out why he was visiting me. And so she goes, oh, I get it. I go, yeah, because I told him, who I was. I said my name is Debbie, and she goes, oh, okay, I get it. And I go, what's going on? And she goes, our daughter's name is Debbie, and she used to live and sleep in that room. So that was kind of crazy because the lady's like, oh no, why did he connect with you and not connect with me and all that stuff. And that was like at the beginning of the start of like little ghost stories and not ghost stories, but things happening with me in that house. He would open the door and close the door and turn off the lights and turn them on and move things. I would put stuff somewhere and he'd move it. And I don't know if it's that he wanted me to move, because I believe that there is no dark entities and they can't get attached to you and they can't hurt you in any way. But he was probably trying to figure out, it probably confused him, Debbie. Do you know what I mean? Here I was in the room. And I mean, his daughter was older than I was, but I thought it was kind of cool that I could literally see this guy. I mean, he wasn't solid, but he was that kind of a vibration of coming through. And he sent me blessings. And like I said, he would always do things with me continuously until as long as I lived there. And then I moved to my to another friend's house. And that's another ghost story. But I'm not going to talk about it today. I just wanted to tell you about this one, which is one of my many ghost stories that I'm going to tell you about. If you want to get a reading from me, you can go to psychicdebbie.com for information, for scheduling and payment options. And like I said, I got tons of YouTube videos, so I hope you enjoy them. And I want to send you blessings and smiles. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Check out the ghosts.